Ba-da-da-bum-bum, addy-addy-yeah, ba-da-da-bum-bum, ba-da-da-bum-bum, addy-addy-yeah.
Danny, can you define microaggression for us, please?
Oh, microaggression. So Chantel gave some really great examples. Microaggression, to me, this word is problematic because it's already minimizing how someone's experience. So another way that I've heard it defined is subtle acts of exclusion. So it's so if you think about it in that way, it's something that someone does, whether it's intentional or unintentional, to exclude the non-dominant culture person, Black person, Hispanic person, from to exclude someone. So that is how I would define microaggression.
Great. So, ladies, tell me, how do you deal with microaggression in the workplace, and why does this matter?
It's the one, Chantel, you gave so many great, as you were sharing, everything you said, I was like, yes, you're so well spoken all the time. Like, why are you surprised by that? Why is that shocking? Right? But just wait, oh, you're such a good communicator. Or I don't know, and ladies, you chime in and let me know if you've experienced this, where I guess I'm supposed to be like Urban Dictionary for people. And so if you don't,
You better
understand what
define
that word
lit.
is, you should know, right? Like coming to me, and I work in human resources.
Yeah.
And so it should be people who know better, like should be educated. But no, I should know how to translate, apparently.
I'll be brief for real. Dwayne, do a little finger thing,
I
because
got you. I get you.
I'm
I get
living in this. I'm
it.
living in this space right now, so
Yeah.
I will not be offended, and I won't cuss you out on Zoom if you.
Just call me. Just text me and cuss me out after that.
How I'm currently dealing with it is I'm not speaking to particular people, and today is Juneteenth. Obviously, happy Juneteenth, everybody, on live and on the panel. Um, and I kind of had to amend how I was going to do a particular protest today because um, all of our kids were here, and I am good at what I do in terms of creating an environment in the space and emceeing. And so I was speaking to my kids and my coworkers, but there are certain people that I'm not speaking to, and that is very problematic. And they are white. And the reason why I'm not doing that anymore, because the microaggressions that I am not only dealing with, but I am seeing, and it's the narrative that's the same across so many spectrums, but it's infuriating that this happens in vocational ministry. It's our white brothers and sisters not knowing how to deal with conflict. And because I, or some of my counterparts that I watch, because we want to deal with conflict from a genuine space of, I'm not trying to give you these hands, I just want to get to the meat of what's going on. I want to do this thing on some Matthew 18. That does not happen. Trying to not use broad generalizing words. That does not happen in many cases that I've experienced, where you bring yourself and you say, hey, I want to deal with this. And it's, Chantel attacked me. And I just can't do my job. And you go, huh? I just wanted to talk to you about whatever you were clearly upset with me about. But it's I'm intimidating because I want to have the conversation, or to my face or to my counterpart's face. It's, oh my gosh, Chantel is great. She's lovely. We love her. And then behind closed doors is a litany of things that you have against me. And then they all come out random and you go, what? Why didn't anybody say anything? And it's also it's the inability to deal with conflict. That's the way I'm seeing the microaggressions. And it's the tendency to try to shush Black women, and in particular Black women that hold power, that lead a particular thing as a director, as a whatever team leader, the boss of a particular space. And so for me, it's the silencing, and the silencing is usually brought on by tears. And so yeah, I can ramble about that, but I am dealing with it where I'm not speaking until we deal with conflict. until we have the right conversations. You're not going to benefit from my words if we're not going to have the proper conversation. One that we are not saying 90% of fluff, and then the 10% that needs to be said, that is a little uncomfortable, we just don't talk about. That is ridiculous. It's not biblical. It's not productive. And that happens a lot amongst women, especially in the workplace, between, in particular, specifically, Black women and white women. And that is a big deal. Men don't experience it in the same way if they have power. They usually yield, especially when discussions of racism exist. But if we speak up and say something, it's offensive and it's abrasive and it's
You're the angry Black woman.
Yeah.
the angry, that microaggression, the angry Black woman, the microaggression also of, anyway, someone else go.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I mean, I was in a leadership position as an assistant principal in my 20s. I'm only 5'2", and I'm like, short. And so I was having a conversation and I was trying to get coaching as far as how to support someone who wasn't performing. And so the coaching and the feedback that I received was, well, do you think you're too intimidating? And I was like, yes, but why does that have anything to do with their performance? Like, I am passionate about what I do. I'm going to speak up. I'm going to be an advocate. I'm going to be strong and live in my beliefs, but that shouldn't have to do with anything about their performance because they feel like I'm passionate and I'm intimidating.
Yeah, and I think that I can relate to that. I can relate to, a lot of what y'all said. There's times when we get asked a question and we give our opinion and it can be labeled as, bullying or aggressive or whatever. And it's like, you asked me the question. I didn't initiate the conversation. And then, as an attorney, there was a time when, I was in court every day and we're dealing with kind of like the same set of attorneys or the same type that are coming in the criminal system. And, I would be sitting in the seat that the attorney sits in, like in front of the bar, like not, there's an audience, there's a bar, and then there's the attorneys, and people would come up to the table and say, oh, I need to talk to an attorney. Like I'm looking for the assistant attorney. And that happened repeatedly, usually middle-aged or older white men who I had like spoken with before. And so constantly just like having to explain, like, I am the attorney. So I got to the point where I just wouldn't. I'd say, oh, okay, well, they'll be here shortly, and just let them wait because it's ridiculous. Like that I'm continuing to have to do that. People going to, we would have a law clerk or an intern and he was a male. So they would go to him first and he put a sign on his computer that said intern on the outside of his computer so that they would come to me. And so thinking about all that it took, being the first person in my family to go to law school and all that it took to get through it, law school is its own, set of racism, to overcome those hurdles, to only be, microaggressed out of the title that I worked really, really hard for. And then when you do call things out, Stephanie, Danielle, Chantel, everything y'all described, like I've experienced just the fragility, just white fragility, like, or them like saying, that you're just being emotional and chalking things up to like feelings and not necessarily the fact that you are holding them accountable or, gaslighting you and acting like, look, I know that I'm looking at a freaking TV and you're trying to convince me it's not a TV, right? Like I know that I'm looking at white supremacy in work or racism or disparate treatment, and you're trying to convince me that that's not what it is. And so the way that I deal with it really, in my previous position, when I had a lot of that on a daily basis of just people coming to court acting like I'm not sitting there, is other women of color attorneys who were experiencing the same thing, really being a support system for me. And then just getting to the point where I take back some of my power um,
Yes.
and call it out. You know, if I'm walking in the courthouse and you're telling me to smile, no, you smile. Like, don't tell me to smile. Like, you know,
Are you
like
angry? Are you upset?
yeah,
That
like getting to
smiling
the point,
thing is
what
a
is
whole
that?
nother thing.
Like getting to the point where like I felt more comfortable owning my voice and
Yeah.
calling that stuff out. And I think it takes practice and building up courage. I was saying this yesterday on a panel, you know, courage is a muscle and you have to work it. And
That's right.
so just little by little using my voice out loud and building up that courage to just say like, no, I'm not going to let you dehumanize me in this way.
Yeah.
So I want to take this and apply it to the school setting because it happens in the workplace, but it also happens in our schools. And previous district I was in, they did a report and it was showing that 92% of the young ladies that were expelled were African American. And it's like, this is insane and should not be. And so I looked for a resource. So if you're looking for resources, this is Push Out by Monique Watson. It's a cute little book. It's so good. And it highlights all of the things that you ladies have talked about in the workplace that happen in school. So girls are getting pushed out of school for dress code. Girls are getting pushed out of school for using their voice and it's perceived as being defiant or an attitude. And they're being pushed out of school because they're not quote unquote ladylike, which I never fell into the ladylike category as well. So I understand that one firsthand, that a strong voice is considered not ladylike. And so you no longer fit the mold of what a young lady should look like. And so now it's interpreted as disrespectful. And so now you have to leave my classroom. And so as I started reading this, I started to really turn my eye to that. As I would walk the hallways, I was in a position where I would just go and visit classrooms and support teachers. And I realized I was in a school that was 70% African-American, 30% Hispanic, and 100% of the students that have been pushed out of the classroom and waiting in the hallway were young Black girls. And so to the T, this book was being lived out in our school. And so I had to put a full stop to, okay, this science lesson can wait. We got to work on what's happening here, because the main thing is our girls have to have access to the education. They have to have access to a fair environment. And as teachers, we need to step back and we need to do the work. So if there are any educators on the line, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to read this book, Push Out, Monique Watson. It's incredible. It speaks to all of it.
But before you read that book, you noticed that the standard for behavior and conduct in general was what?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed, so the first school I was in, my first experiences, it was a 92% Black, 8% Hispanic school. And so it's hard to gather like real statistics from that based on, you know, students who are being pushed out of school. What I did notice though was the misinterpretation and what you could see the boys getting away with that the girls couldn't. And even at camp, we experienced this, that girls with the dress code and what might work in another school across town didn't work for our girls. And so they were constantly getting in trouble for it, or they were constantly being criticized for it. So you've told our girls they have to wear khaki pants. Well, this is how their body feels khaki pants. They can't help how their body is built. So we're not going to criticize a 14-year-old because she feels her pants differently than the young lady across town. So, you know, it was seeing those things. And then someone had mentioned finding the courage to speak on those. So educators, again, your job is not just about science, social studies, math, and English. It's to speak on behalf of your students. And so that was a part of my process as well.
But I was trying to push you to say what you told our parents. No, it's fine. Which is our girls, this goes back to the beauty deal. Our girls are going to always be a deficit because if the standard is young, white girls, you already start, you out of there. Like if you so that's the standard, you don't fit that.
Right. Young, white, quiet, compliant girls.
Yeah.
Not ones that question or push back.
Yes.
Yeah. And then Dwayne, why does it matter? I think everyone kind of said it, but all of these things prevent you from being your full self, right? And then, I mean, you're talking about in school, you're missing out, right? Like a woman should be able to challenge and think and, you know, and ask the questions. And so you're stifling that. That's why it matters. And that's what white supremacy does. It just sucks everything out.
Especially when you see, and it causes anxiety and stress when you see it, other women that are allowed to be bulldogs in the you know, meeting room, and they're allowed. I mean, when I was at camp, there was a great difference in how one of my friends led versus other people. And oh my God, Bridget, yeah, she's just so harsh. I know you lying. You did not just see such and such over here. Just handle her business and tell it like it is. But when Chantel does it or Bridget does it, it's the end of the world. But y'all literally have nicknames for our white sisters in this other area that can literally be like jerks. And they are like, so you go home thinking you're crazy.
Yes.
And that's
To the point,
stressful.
to the point where I've been in those meetings where I've had Black colleagues ask me, can you say this? Because it'll be heard and interpreted differently if it comes from you. And so, yeah, and we finally had that real conversation with our board and our leaders of, I can't say something if someone else can't. Like, there has to be some openness in that conversation.
Wow. Wow.